Well, hello everybody. Welcome. This is RambleCast. It's February 19th, 2025. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
Uh wow. It's you know, we're still living in 2020. But it's also, you know, weird how the world is going. Um and with it, honestly, like tech news has done the full transition to crazy town. Um, Nothing seems normal, nothing is sane. But on the plus side, we have Austin and Brawl in chat. Howdy, guys. What's going on? And Corbin, what's going on with you?
It's snowing, which is fun. I don't get that very often down here. Um, it only snowed one other time this winter, and it was like half an inch or something. It was just like a little bit of dusting and then a lot of ice that stayed there for several days. But now I'm getting a pretty decent amount of snow and also a lot of ice. So I'm not leaving my apartment for at least the next day. And also my power might go out. We'll see. We're gonna find out together.
Um,
Austin
well,
said, "Is Corbin getting the 16E or not?" Absolutely not.
oh, see, I was
And I
gonna, I
will.
was gonna
I
make him wait into the next hour when we get to the topic, because
Yeah. You gotta wait. You gotta wait for the full explanation. But the TLDR is absolutely not.
Corbin doesn't know how to lead people on for the big grand reveal. Um, no, no. Fun fact. Neither am I. But probably for different reasons. Anyway, well, we'll get more into that shortly. But in the meantime, let's. Man, OBS always does funky things to my camera. Okay. In the meantime, let's make fun of Humane-ity. Actually, as a side note, while I am using the let's make fun of transition, I'm gonna briefly make fun of Twitch because this is just something I saw right before we started. Apparently, they have updated their rules and now might be reinstating old accounts, or willing to reinstate old accounts. So my grand return back to Twitch could happen someday. We shall see. In the meantime, back to making fun of Humane-ity. Those silly goobers and their goofy pin. Yeah, they're back in the news. And the news is, of course, that they're not back at all. They're actually going to become a downstairs basement office under HP's headquarters.
Yeah. So Humane was one of the companies that made one of the silly AI pens that you were supposed to talk to, and it would do things. With the intended purpose being it could be something approximating a phone, but not quite as distracting, or at least attempting to prove a different. I don't know what the word is, like a different way to do things that a phone would normally do. Which of course is an interesting idea, and it's something that the tech industry is very much interested in because smartphones took over everyone's life. So if you make the thing that replaces the smartphone, you're in a good spot. But this was not it. It was very expensive. It needed a recurring subscription because it had its own cellular connection and used, generative AI on servers. So it received a lot of bad reviews when it came out. Full disclosure, I never tried it. I didn't really look at most of the reviews because I don't want something like this. um,
You don't
just
want the Star
like
Trek communicator that doesn't work at all like a Star Trek communicator?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I the closest thing I've seen in sort of this form factor and idea that I could see the appeal of was that thing Google made. I forgot what it's called, like the wearable camera. What was it? What was that?
Are you talking about Google Glass?
No, the one you stuck on you and was always recording. It would try to clip things.
I
Uh,
feel like that wasn't Google Clips. It
no, I think it.
was.
Yes, it was. It was
Oh,
Google.
was it
That's
Google
what I'm
Clips?
thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah. Google Clips is the hands-free camera built with Google Smarts that lets you effortlessly capture and view more of the spontaneous moments with people.
I thought that was
That was
the name of the one that you just put on like shelves and stuff, and it would do that. But okay.
yeah. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea. Maybe something like that could return in the future. But that wasn't trying to be a phone. That was just trying to be a like, here's how to record cute things with like your pet or your kid or whatever. In a way that doesn't need you to go grab your phone and miss it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so this was a very different thing that didn't work, and there was a lot of reporting that the Humane people knew it flopped and were trying to do the Silicon Valley thing of finding someone to buy whatever they're worth, and they finally found a company to do it, and it's HP. So now HP has brutally murdered Humane as well as Palm, and probably some others I'm forgetting. But Palm actually had like cool products, so this is a little bit different. Um, so they've bought Humane, and a lot of their staff will go over to HP, and all of Humane's patents and stuff are now belong to HP, and they are supposedly forming a new like group inside HP to work on AI stuff. I don't really know if that's ever going to amount to anything. If it does, I'm sure it'll be something very annoying that most people don't want to use. And as a result, all of the Humane AI pins are shutting down because they're built around cloud services that HP will not pay for. So, if you bought one in the last 90 days, you can go request a refund. If you bought one before then, sorry.
And let's be honest, no one bought one in the last 90 days.
Yeah. Really, yeah. Most of the people who bought this were people who pre-ordered it, most likely. Because I mean, once the reviews came out, it was pretty clear it was a flop. And yeah, so I think kind of what everyone expected here as soon as this was out is like, yeah, this is gonna shut down randomly one day and leave people with an expensive brick, which is dumb because I think this is just Android. So I kind of feel like they should at least, send out one last update to turn off all their custom stuff and let you like, sideload APKs on it very easily. I feel like that's the least you can do. Most you can do is like unlock the bootloader and let people go wild. But they don't seem to want to do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was this or the other AI pen, but one of them, I think someone did access the Android internals. That might be the other one. Yeah, I'm not sure. I forgot what the other big AI pen was called that was also doing this.
Yeah, I was trying to remember that name a minute ago, and it's not coming to me, but...
Okay, yeah, I found a post from, I think, the Humane Pen just runs Android. So they could have unlocked it. Seems kind of dumb.
Well, yeah, of course they could obviously unlock it. I think more likely they just don't care. And it's just not really worth their effort to do that. But yeah, it is what it is. So, okay. So now, obviously, with the shutdown, the thing everyone's making fun of is that you can still, like, they're saying that you can still perform local operations on the device, like asking how much battery is left, which is hilarious because that's definitely not the thing anyone would want to do. And shutting down all the cloud services just kills any usefulness this thing had. So yeah, it's effectively a dead device. Ironically, even after Google shut down everything related to Google Glass, it remained far more functional than this thing will. Which, yikes! Considering the way that the Glass shutdown went, I mean, it was pretty bleak, and it was still more useful.
Yeah, that is something that I is very interesting. How it's definitely not universally true, but like older devices, a lot of them generally lean towards being more usable when all access was removed.
That's true.
I do want to try writing something about this if I can make it a more coherent argument, because it is something I've been thinking about as I was playing around with the Windows phone I got that runs Windows Mobile, and it's like, first of all, actually, some online services do work, but none of them from Microsoft. Like the Google Maps app on this still works. That was kind of surprising. But like, you know, all the apps for like I went and downloaded the app for syncing this. It's still on Microsoft's website. It needs like Windows XP, but that part was pretty easy. And then I just copied files onto it that I found on the Internet Archive of apps, and I installed them, and they work just as they did in 2005. And that's not something I can do with the $800 iPhone on my desk, or like most of the other electronics I own. You know, whenever my Macs, stop getting Mac OS updates, there's still hopefully, unless Apple continues locking down Mac OS, I can still load apps onto it myself, but there's not really like an alternate OS there. So yeah, definitely interesting.
So yeah,
Rabbit R1, thank you, Austin. That's the other
yeah,
thing.
that was the one, and that was a handheld, not a pin, but still. It was that thing that happened around the same time. Okay, now a few things I want to point out just for fun context. One of the biggest ones, and I'm glad I found this, a list of HP's recent acquisitions. Actually, technically, this is a full list of their acquisitions, but the part I'd like to draw attention to is a column here that is the valuation, or rather how much they acquired it for. And HP's most recent acquisition was for Poly. This is a company that makes like earbuds, headphones, like web conferencing, chat kind of stuff. They were acquired for $3.3 billion, which is undeniably just kind of a huge chunk. But look over the rest of this list. Corbin, you don't need to, but I'm just saying, if anyone's watching this, HyperX, $425 million. Nimble Storage, a little over $1 billion. SimpliVity, which is a terrible name, and I'm glad someone acquired them, $650 million. The lowest in this list, going back to 2016, at least, I'm sure there's more, but SGI. And SGI used to be a relatively significant company. That was acquired for $275 million. Now let's reemphasize Humane, $116 million. They're chump change. Literally, like, this is the lowest acquisition HP has made in a good long time. In fact, I'm scrolling back, and it's not until oh my god. It wasn't until, I couldn't find anything less than that until 2010. In 2010, HP acquired Phoenix Technologies, which Phoenix BIOS, for anyone who's not immediately thinking of it. That was for 12 million. That is a yikes. I don't think I would want the reputation of being one of the lowest acquisitions or actually literally the lowest acquisition a company has made in the last decade. Anyway, that said, everyone is rightfully asking the question, what does HP even want this for? And
I think just patents. It's got to be just patents.
I agree mostly. I do think it's patents. I think there's also an element of okay, so I'm gonna be kind of harsh for a moment. That's a lie. I'm gonna be very harsh through this whole thing, but I'm gonna be particularly harsh about the fact that I don't think that they care about the development team. I think the developers, they recognize we're basically just selling snake oil. But I think they might want them to some extent as marketers. Because the fact of the matter is, for as much as the whole thing was a farce and absolutely disastrously failed, fact of the matter is, they tricked a whole lot of people into being interested in it. They got attention. It wasn't a good product. It did not sell well, obviously. Investors were so full of regret that they were just practically talking trash about it before it even made sense to start throwing their own investment under the bus. Like, pretty much everyone decided that this thing was horrible. And so no one paid for it. But there was so much attention on it. And this is something HP is terrible at. They cannot get attention on their products. And a part of me wonders, did they acquire this thinking these guys are full of crap, but they know how to sell a product. So let's get them in to add hype to products that we really need to like get under the microscope. I don't know. It's a theory. It's the only thing that makes sense besides we just wanted the patents and everything else can go. Like, if they just wanted the patents, they wouldn't be hiring any of the people too.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. Like, I think I am also scrolling through the HP list. Is it the Wikipedia one?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot they bought of course I scrolled past it right as my brain switched.
Here's the link to the list in chat.
Oh, Compaq. Yeah, I forgot they bought Compaq. That was a big one. Yeah, I don't know. HP spends money on a lot of stupid things, though, so I guess this tracks. Like HP was like the main. They were the one who got caught holding the bag when Itanium flopped, too. Yeah. So like they made so many Itanium servers that no one but them wanted, and that just stopped recently. I'm sure they're still running them somewhere in production. But like that was a colossal waste of time and money. They bought Palm, and then I'm sure the engineers or whoever who were working on Palm went and did something else. But as a technology, they did nothing with Palm. Well, that's not fair because the WebOS like did get updates after HP bought them for a little while, and I think maybe one phone came out after they bought them, or I might just be thinking of the touchpad that was HP branded. I'm not sure. A little bit happened after they bought them, and then they killed them.
Okay, so I'm gonna, because I don't want to try to backtrack through all of it, I'm gonna interrupt you and say, first, a lot of the Palm engineers, yes, they did go on to do something else. They went on to develop material design at Google. That's not even a
Mm,
joke. Most of the major engineers ended up at Google, where that's what they worked on, including Matias Duarte and I forget who the others were, but yeah, that was 100% them. Um,
they're good designers.
they're okay designers.
WebOS was really cool at the time. That's still one smartphone OS thing I've never actually had on a device. I used the emulators back in the day, but I
Yeah,
never held one.
to be fair, I've never actually used WebOS outside of like holding someone's phone for a couple of minutes, kind of kind of territory. So yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with it either. But yeah, all the same, there's that. And then HP, I would argue, made. I don't think that their WebOS acquisition was bad. I think they got use out of it, and I think they had grand ideas of what it could become. They just once they had it, I suspect they realized that they needed to do more with it, and in the course of like trying to figure that out, I think they realized we can't license this because everyone's going to use Android. We can't. We could open source it, but then we're maintaining a thing that again only some people are going to use. We're not going to make much money back on it, so we'll leave it in its current state with whatever open source we're doing, but let's just not. And then they turned it into the platform for their TVs, the platform to run some of their other smart stuff. And yeah, that was it. So I don't think that they got their full money's worth out of the WebOS acquisition, but I think they got enough that they were happy enough with it. Like, I don't think they lost significantly in that acquisition. Just maybe it didn't pan out as well as it could have.
Yep. So rest in peace, AI Pin. Um, Speaking of um, corporate things, I don't know. I don't have it. I don't have anything. We're gonna do another debunk time. We're debunking. So there were a couple articles you may have seen about Windows 11 supposedly dropping support for some Intel CPUs, like some older ones. That's not true. That was a document on Microsoft's website that explained the OEM requirements for shipping a new computer with Windows 11. And at some point, Microsoft bumped those up to, I believe it was, they bumped up by a couple generations. And so some sites saw that and interpreted it as like Windows 11 is dropping support for more Intel CPUs, more on top of the pretty drastic hardware compatibility that came with the initial Windows 11 update. It's not true. That's just what Microsoft is telling PC manufacturers to do for new computers. Kind of like how I believe Windows 11 has always required laptops to like have a webcam, for example. But that was never a stated requirement for like just running Windows 11. There's different expectations with the computers that are shipping with this versus the ones that can be upgraded. So don't freak out. Nothing's changing. Maybe something will change when Windows 12 comes out. Maybe they'll bump up the minimum requirements again, and we'll get to repeat this process again. But for now, nothing's changing. So don't freak out. Once I think this is maybe the most important thing I can do right now is tell you, like, there are so many things to freak out about right now. I'm gonna tell you this one. Don't worry about it. You're fine. I think
Uh,
that's a very important public service to do in these times.
doing the Lord's work. And Kirby
Yeah,
is
just like the I think we mentioned this last week, the Android security thing about it supposedly scanning images, also not real. Don't freak out about it. You're good.
fair enough. And Kirby, I believe, is clarifying that it's now Rocket Lake 11th gen. That is going to be the new minimum.
Okay. Yeah, and I know like separate to this, Windows 11 did stop working on some older CPUs recently, but it was CPUs that were well below the actual official requirement. I think it was like 6th gen Intel Core. So like obviously that sucks, but like that was never something Microsoft promised would work.
Yeah. So, let's see. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a basic like minimum viable product update, so to speak. Like, uh, hey, if Windows 12 can still support the old CPUs, but vendors aren't allowed to ship anything with the old ones, good.
Yeah,
That's the right thing to do. That's fine.
I want to say this happened with Windows 10 a couple times because if you remember, there was that brief period with Windows 8 and Windows 10 where Microsoft was really trying to make it a tablet OS. So they let the minimum requirements for Windows on tablets be like absolutely nothing.
Right.
Like I think you could ship them with like a gig of RAM or 2 gigs of RAM or something. And they eventually reeled that back.
As they certainly should have.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I had I think it was my brother who had a Windows 8 tablet, and I upgraded it to Windows 10 at some point, and then I think I used it. I don't remember exactly where that tablet came from, but I did use it for a while, and wow, those were garbage. That was never going to work.
Yeah, I'm. Look, I'm. There's plenty of things that could be said about Apple, and should be said, but I feel like they've at least got a few more standards about what they're willing to ship these days. Not to say that they're, not to say storage options are always entirely appropriate, but at least for the most part, they won't ship anything with less than 8 gigs of RAM on a laptop. And I think even the iPads, I think their lowest is like what, 2 or 3, something like that.
I don't know what the RAM is on iPads, but I know on Macs they're not selling 8 gig RAM Macs anymore.
Oh, have they stopped?
Okay. Yeah, they bumped they on like the MacBook Airs and everything. They changed the 16 gig RAM pricing to what the base model was, and aren't selling the base model. I know you can still get them, like there's still stock, but it's the same price as the 16 gig. So yeah, don't do that. Kirby said Windows 10 was originally designed to run on really low end hardware. Yeah, I mean, for a while it was pretty good. Like I remember, well, I don't know if I'd say pretty good. I would say it was.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft kind of had like a duty to give everything that shipped with Windows 8 a like usable operating system, and then once that goal was accomplished, they started moving on. In much the same way Windows 7 existed as a like we need to get some of the computers that were built for XP on something modern, and then we can move on. So. Like obviously I'd love it if like Windows 11 worked on more hardware. I think the TPM hard requirement is still dumb, and there's going to be a lot of people who don't know anything about this, who are completely out of the loop, who come October are going to have PCs that don't get security updates anymore. And I think that sucks. and they shouldn't be put in that position because Microsoft needs to sell Copilot plus PCs.
Oh, but that's the way the cookie's going to crumble, so.
Yes. Install Ubuntu.
Yes.
I'm only half joking. Maybe not Ubuntu specifically, but like if you have people in your life who only use like a web browser and like maybe need to sometimes open PDFs, that's a great candidate for Linux. If you know a person who is deep into Excel, no, don't do that. You don't have a choice. I'm sorry. Web Excel sucks. Don't make them do that.
So really quick, just to respond to Brawl pointing out the green screen on my end is wonky. Yes, I'm aware. So really quick explanation, there is a window to the office just right that direction, and it is the sun is passing or there are tree branches basically in the way, but they're pretty barren tree branches. So the sun is getting through at some spots and not at others, and it's causing massive lighting imbalance. I could put something up to block the window, but I was a little bit lazy, a little bit in a rush, and so I didn't do that. So I've been trying to manually adjust the exposure on the webcam, and if I don't notice it, then yeah, it ends up like this, where right now it is overexposed and my skin looks ghostly white. And if it's
my green screen works.
Yes, and if it's underexposed, then the green screen looks wonky as hell. Weirdly, it doesn't end up looking green, which is funny.
Yeah, this is my green screen. I make the Mac do it.
Yes.
We did discuss like me actually doing this background replacement to a green screen so then I could be transparent like Cody, but Cody can get that working, so that hasn't happened yet.
Well, I'm sure I could get it working, but at the day that we tried messing with it, OBS was doing this weird thing that OBS does, where sometimes it won't show dialogues or like the right click menu, basically any like popover state stuff sometimes just stops working on the Mac version. It's a bug that I know has been reported, but I think they do nothing about those, because they don't have a strong, or they don't have a strong team of Mac developers. So, they fix a few things here and there, but
which is weird because Mac is so easy to develop for. I hear nothing but great things about Mac development.
Well, to some extent, you are hearing those from Zach, and that's probably a bad source of information.
Yeah. So speaking of bad processors, we have Intel news.
Oh wow, going on.
So CNBC reported, I don't know if they're the source. No, Wall Street Journal is the source. This is just a reblog. Wall Street Journal reported that Intel's rivals, TSMC and Broadcom, are each looking at potential deals that would break up Intel into two companies. So CNBC said, Broadcom has been closely examining Intel's chip design and marketing business, the journal reported, adding that the company had discussed a potential bid with its investors, but would likely only proceed if it found a partner for Intel's manufacturing business. TSMC, the world's biggest contract chip maker, has severally studied controlling some or all of Intel's chip plants, potentially as part of an investor consortium or other structure. And right now, the two companies are not like working together on a specific deal. But so basically, Broadcom and TSMC are eyeballing Intel to split it into and take different parts. And this is very funny because Intel has, their last CEO just messed up in every way imaginable. and Intel's fabs in the US are still not good. The new CEO seems to be on the right track, sort of. But this is a like shipwreck many years in the making, so I don't think anyone expects like sudden change in direction. And like everything happening now would have already been set in motion with the change before the change. So, but yeah, so that would be interesting if Intel gets broken up. Um, Kirby said, "Is Doge going to cut funding for the chips because of this?" I mean, I don't know if anyone's actually buying Intel's chips at these fabs. And they already got CHIPS Act money, so they're good.
Pretty
I don't know.
much. Have
I
they
don't
actually
know.
manufactured anything at any of those yet? I thought they were still like. I thought the one that they supposedly broke ground on wasn't finished, and then the others were just like, maybe we'll get to those someday.
I have no clue. But I've not like caught up with that specifically. So maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking to me if they found like someone to make stuff for, especially on like the less complicated nodes. But yeah. So yes, that could happen. That's fun. I've said repeatedly, like I really wish Intel would succeed because they're like the only company that is anywhere close to building chips in the U.S. as a U.S. company. TSMC has plants here now, but they're Taiwanese. So I'd like them to be better, but due to past leadership, they've repeatedly chosen not to be good.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So
I will say other interesting twist here is Broadcom is American, so if they wanted to eat Intel, I don't think anyone would mind. TSMC is not, so I'm not sure if they would be allowed to buy this because we're back in the protectionism stage of capitalism, and the U.S. administration just blocked I forget what their name is, but it was a Japanese company from buying U.S. steel. That happened recently. The UK did something kind of like this recently, where Nvidia wanted to buy ARM, and Nvidia is American and ARM is a UK company, and the UK did end up blocking it because ARM is like one of their last remaining tech companies. So I'm not sure if TSMC even got to the stage where it would try to make an offer, if it would even happen. But that's like many steps ahead of where we are now.
Yeah, so there's many different angles to this, and I agree. I don't think it's even remotely predictable how any of this will go. But first off, I kind of get the sense that well, okay. I want to quickly address one point about TSMC. You pointed out they're Taiwanese, and yes, that is a factor. However, one of the biggest concerns about TSMC was not that they were Taiwanese or non-American. It was their geographic location, because so much of the manufacturing that they were doing was taking place actually in Taiwan. And the concern was, if China ever decides to invade Taiwan, US access to Taiwanese plants would suddenly get cut off, and that was the major freak out. Now that's not to say that being a non-US company isn't also a factor, especially given the current administration. But the geography was, I think, the primary concern, with the xenophobia being the secondary. So having said that, I think if TSMC were to buy part of Intel, or let's just say possibly the whole of Intel, um, I could see the current administration having a freak out about this. I don't think that it would fall under the same scrutiny though, because presumably, if TSMC does buy Intel, part of what they'd be buying it for is to actually carry out those contracts to build local plants. And I can almost guarantee the acquisition, if it's allowed to go through, that would be one of the like top of the list, like really literally first place on the list. You have to build local manufacturing plants. They must they must like produce at the same level as plants that you have overseas. They must do this, they must do that. They have to have this much output. I can almost guarantee any acquisition would involve a lot of requirements, and it would all be about local manufacturing, which at least it should, because frankly the CHIPS Act left a lot on the table in terms of like requirements for Intel, which is why Intel has been so kind of brazen about admitting, yeah, we're gonna break ground, we'll start building stuff, but I don't know, we got our money, we're happy. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for this. Could go, if it does go to TSMC, this actually could be great for the whole notion of domestic production.
Right. Like, yeah, if the goal is just like some kind of chip production in the US with the jobs that come with that, then yeah, it should be fine. But you know, the US isn't making a lot of good decisions right about now that make sense. So, you know, we'll see.
The US is like a teenager that is addicted to like breaking and entering. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, like as soon as someone tells Trump that the T stands for trans, it's over. um, so we'll see. Speaking of China,
China.
Acer said it is gonna raise prices in the U.S. So the Telegraph did an interview with Acer's chief executive and chairman, Jason Chin, who said that actually the quote is just, "We will have to adjust the end user price to reflect the tariff," speaking about recent tariffs on Chinese imports. "We think 10% probably will be the default price increase because of the import tax. It's very straightforward." And that's a quote. So not any specific info right now. It's also not super definitive. He's just saying like, yeah, probably 10%. But yeah, so this is probably going to happen with a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Soon.
Yeah. You know. Well, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
You can go.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Acer is doing what everyone else is eventually going to do. This is 100% going to be the default result. They're basically just going to, you know, throw their hands up in the air and say, "All right, it's time." You know, we know that the tariffs are happening, or are they actually getting tariffed yet? I think they are, right? Because they put a pause on Mexico and Canada, but I'm pretty sure the Chinese tariffs are in effect now.
I believe so. I do know there was also the issue with the cheaper shipments from China being delayed, but I think that was reversed almost immediately. But the core tariffs are still in place. Right. I'm not super mega up to date. Because it's changing every day, and yeah. I'm tired. Some days I'm not gonna look at the news because it's too depressing.
So Carson says, "Who buys Acer though?" First off, Go into Best Buy. I guarantee there's someone in there buying Acer stuff. Second, motherboards. It
Yeah, I mean motherboards, displays.
Yeah, Acer still
Yeah,
makes
they
a
get
killing in both of those markets.
yeah. I mean like a lot of accessories, like Curry said, like they make a lot of gaming laptops. Um, I mean they make I don't know if it's out yet, but they're also making like a Steam Deck type thing. But yeah, like they make a ton of stuff. I don't think it doesn't seem like they're quite as diversified as like Asus,
No.
who actually literally does make everything, but they're up there for sure.
Yeah, they didn't have the same sort of rise to success that Asus did. Which isn't to say they haven't been very successful though. Just Asus, honestly, like the ROG marketing gimmick was way more successful, and Acer never really had something that directly like countered that. Um, that being said, yeah, huge company still that makes a lot of electronics. Well, especially a lot of components. My suspicion is that the tariff probably doesn't affect the base, the whole base price of the products. It probably is more focused on individual components or component prices, or maybe it's whatever the import price is, or like the valued price as opposed to the end price. Regardless, whatever the case may be, um, yeah, an increase of
Yeah,
10% is pretty healthy. That's, it's maybe not as massive as I think some people expected, but at the same time, that's sales tax in a lot of states. And
yeah,
so,
and Acer, also important to note, is entirely a Chinese company, I believe.
yeah,
Um,
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Though I know
to
they have physical facilities in the US, not necessarily doing much, but
right.
in theory, for example, if they wanted, they could ship components over here at a lower cost and then assemble everything, package it up, and then ship it out to final retail, and that could save them, I'm guessing, probably about 10%. Um,
Yeah,
it would certainly save them on the tariffs. Like if the final assembled price is definitely lower, or sorry, definitely higher than the component price. So who knows?
yeah. Like
They could
I
save
know.
money, but whether they'd want
Yeah,
to or
like
not, I don't know.
Lenovo is also kind of in that weird pool because they are, I believe, mostly a Chinese company, but I know their global headquarters is in the US. It's like 15 minutes from me. Um, and also they still have a bunch of US bits from when they swallowed Motorola. So, um, yeah. So, fun times. I think generally the expectation going into this was all electronics will probably get more expensive as a result of these tariffs, and that's gonna start happening. Not immediately, but eventually companies will start looking at their expense sheets and going, "Ooh, we need to pass this on to the buyer now."
Yeah.
So this is gonna be happening more.
And honestly, I assume I don't think this is an eventually kind of thing so much as it's a definitely kind of thing. At this
Yeah,
stage,
it's yeah,
at this stage, a lot of companies can still sell their existing stock that they've already shipped over here, weeks ago. So that stuff is probably here and selling out at its original prices, but as they run out of existing stock and are shipping replacements, those prices are going to go up. And it's entirely possible some companies have warehouses full of their product that already came through. They didn't have to pay tariffs on it, so they'll
I
have
mean,
things sitting there for a while. But yeah,
I mean,
the
at
prices are
least
definitely going up no matter what.
some companies, I'm assuming because it was very obvious to do this, some companies presumably made a lot of orders at
Yeah.
the end of last year because they knew this was coming.
Yeah,
So
it was not exactly a secret. There was no surprise attack with this. I mean, maybe to some extent because people probably thought it was going to take longer, but uh, Trump
yeah,
did not hide the fact that he planned on throwing tariffs on a lot of electronics. We were talking about this before the election even. So, yeah, anyone who was smart would have put through those orders, including the retailers themselves. And not just because they want to get it cheaper up front, but because if they want, they can also say, well, tariffs went up, so we can just start charging more on the products because everything else is going to go up too. So why
yeah,
shouldn't this
yeah.
product that we already got for less?
I fully expect in some cases tariffs will just be like the default explanation for why something unpopular is happening, just like COVID was. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, why are you laying off all these people? COVID.
Yeah.
Now it's why does your thing cost more? Tariffs. Except tariffs is probably true, is going to be true in most cases, but I'm sure there will be silly versions of that. And Kirby saying that she likes Asus stuff. Yeah, I'm definitely still liking Asus stuff. I wish the I wish they still like try to sell phones here, but they don't. But I do have what do I have that's Asus? I know the two routers I bought recently are Asus. They're pretty nice. I don't know if I have any other Asus equipment around me right now, but yeah, I like their stuff. I had a Asus 1080p monitor that I think my brother is still using. That is very old. Still works fine. Zen phone. Yeah. They still make the Zen phone, but it's not really sold here. I don't think. I think they're just kind of like all the Chinese OEMs that gave up here because it's really hard to sell a phone here if you're not Samsung or Apple.
Yeah. Even
So
OnePlus has really lost interest in trying to compete in the U.S. market.
yeah,
I mean, they'll still sell here, but they're not pushing it like they used to be.
yeah.
Um,
Good routers though.
Indeed.
Speaking of routers,
Wow, that was such an accidental transition, and
that
we'll
worked.
take it.
It worked. Speaking of routers, Asus released the Eero 7. So, Eero is Asus's like mesh Wi-Fi product line. I forget exactly when, but last year I believe they released the Eero Pro 7 as their first Wi-Fi 7 router, and it was like a very high-end thing that like normal people should not buy unless you just have a ton of disposable income. It was made for like you have a lot of devices and you want the latest thing, and you need like super duper robust mesh stuff. So now they've released the Eero 7 as like the new baseline. Like normal people buy this one model, and it starts at $170 for a single Eero 7 router, and the 2-pack is $280, and the 3-pack is $350. And compared to the Pro, a single Pro is $300, and then it goes up to $550 for a 2-pack and $700 for a 3-pack. So that is like you need the did I say Asus at some point? I definitely meant to say Amazon for all this. This is Amazon's thing. So yeah, so this is just their new baseline mesh router. It is Wi-Fi 7. However, it does not support 6 gigahertz. So you don't get that 6 gigahertz band on Wi-Fi 6E and 7 devices because 6E also has 6 gigahertz. So this is kind of like mostly the point of Wi-Fi 6E and 7 is that you get an entire additional band for bandwidth. And I'll say like the main reason I upgraded to Wi-Fi 7 is not because I have many devices that support Wi-Fi 7. I have, I think, 3. And none of those are my phone or my computer. But I upgraded because when I got another router to be a mesh node, and as I get other stuff, the 6 gigahertz band is super open because basically no one has these routers yet. And I live in an apartment complex where the 2.5 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands are the most saturated you can imagine. My keyboard disconnects from my computer sometimes because it is also 2.4. So like I need that extra band that no one is using real bad.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the Eero 7 doesn't have it is very disappointing. But I guess that was there because usually I'm not super up to date on this, but I believe the main difference with the Eero routers historically between the normal ones and the pros is just that the pros had a dedicated backhaul between the mesh nodes and the base one didn't. So like if you had an Eero Pro, there would be like a secret additional Wi-Fi channels that only the Eeros would talk to each other over, and that way you got much lower latency. But you still got everything else on the base model. So that seemed like an okay trade-off for me for the price, but this is a lot more. So
yeah, Carson asks, or yeah, basically saying without 6 gigahertz, what's even the point? And I will quickly also add, I agree with the question he raised a second before that. Didn't even know you could do Wi-Fi 7 without 6 gigahertz. Honestly, that part was surprising to me too. I've never heard of doing 7 without 6 gigahertz in it. So yeah, I'm a little confused by that option, but
I think there have been a couple cheapo routers that also did this. But yeah, like my understanding is that without the 6 gigahertz band, like you still get some performance benefit.
There are definitely some benefits. They have a lot of traffic shaping capabilities. There's some stuff for basically sort of melding, or you can take advantage of the fact that if you have a small packet of data transmitting or lots of small packets, that traffic can be more efficient than a lot of others. There actually are a lot of subtle improvements to Wi-Fi 7 that really do make it a lot better. Not only that, but Wi-Fi 7 is also a lot better at things like frequency hopping and sort of working across multiple frequencies when it needs to. So it can be better in congested areas than 6 and below, but not having 6 gigahertz is a big thing. Like that, if anything, I'd say that's the biggest perk of Wi-Fi 7, even if yes, it existed on 6E first, but yeah,
yeah, because
want 7.
Even if you don't have any client devices that support Wi-Fi 7, which is definitely still the norm and will be for several more years.
What? Okay, I'll let you finish, but I want to come back to that.
Okay, even if you don't have any Wi-Fi 7 devices, there is still a benefit to the Eero systems themselves using it, because they can take advantage of the extra bandwidth and performance improvements and whatnot. But that would also doubly extend to 6 gigahertz, which this doesn't have. But so there's still like a little bit of a reason to get this, even if it doesn't have 6 gigahertz, but it is not ideal for sure.
Yeah, so your comment about client devices. As it goes, devices that support Wi-Fi 7, by and large, if you have a recent flagship phone, you probably have Wi-Fi 7. Again, flagship and recent being the two qualifiers. The last, at least last two Pixel phones have had Wi-Fi 7, maybe more. I forget exactly, but it's at least the 9 and the 8 definitely have it. Let's see. The last, at least, I think the last two, maybe three of the Samsung S series have had it. I think it's just two, actually. Anyway, and then has Apple added it to the iPhone? That's the one I can't remember. I
believe the Pro iPhones for the past two generations have been Wi-Fi 7, but the base models I think are still 6.
Okay, that would make sense.
Or 6E.
I'm gonna actually pull that up just to see if I can find out for sure. But yeah, so that's that's not the
Oh,
that's not
Carson says base 16 has Wi-Fi 7. Am I spreading misinformation again?
Corbin, he lied.
Yes, the base 16 is Wi-Fi 7. Let me check 15 and 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the base iPhone 15 is Wi-Fi 6, and the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max were 6E. Now the base model and everything else is 7. So.
Okay.
I just know mine doesn't have it. I have the 15, and I have merely Wi-Fi 6. Disgusting.
Gross. So old. Anyway, so yeah, if you were at least upgrading your phone every, say, 2 to maybe 3 years, and you're sticking to flagship models, chances are you either have it or you'll have it by the time it will make any sort of difference. And for sure, people upgrade their networking gear way less often than they upgrade anything else.
Oh yeah, this is for sure one of those things that like normal people do not think about at all.
Right.
Like this is the thing where you go over to a friend's house and you're wondering why their Wi-Fi is bad, and you check and they have a router that was made in like 2006.
Yep.
This is definitely occupying the same as like when people upgrade their fridges, and microwaves. We're on like almost that scale.
So yeah, this is, which is all kind of to say, or what I was going to lead into, which is, chances are also the devices that you care about, like, how many devices do you care about actually having Wi-Fi 7 on them? In my rough opinion, it's, depending on how you want to count it, either 3 or 4. It's basically, you want it on your phone, and mostly the reason you want it on your phone is so that when you, let's say, return home, you can upload photos and video from your phone faster, assuming you're not doing this over cellular. So there's that. You probably want it on your laptop because, duh, your laptop's actually going to want it. If you happen to have a streaming stick on your TV that you're connecting wirelessly, as I think most people are, honestly, Wi-Fi 6 is almost guaranteed enough, but in rare instances, or, you know, if congestion or things like that are a problem, or if you're watching a lot of like 4K HDR content, there are times Wi-Fi 6 might not give you the speed that you want. So Wi-Fi 7 might be relevant there. And honestly, I kind of would bundle this item in with the others, but all of this applies to tablets. So if you care about your tablet having high throughput, then maybe 7 matters. The thing is, again, like laptops, if you're buying anything that's reasonably modern, you probably don't have it today, but within the next year, you probably will be able to start getting stuff with 7 almost entirely across the board. A lot of laptops are set to come out with Wi-Fi 7 support this year. And there were several that came out last year, just certainly not as universal of a thing. Like I said, phones already have it.
I believe the latest, like maybe the last 2 Intel laptop CPUs generally have Wi-Fi 7. I know the wireless is not in the CPU, but like it's usually in that package.
Right, it's supported. Whether or not it has the actual chip inside to as a controller for it, that's in question. But
yeah, and I believe all of the like Qualcomm Snapdragon laptops were Wi-Fi 7. That is the only computer I have with Wi-Fi 7 is a Lenovo review unit of a Snapdragon laptop.
Yeah, and if I recall, the latest MacBooks or MacBook Pros still don't have it, but again, I suspect that the next update that they have, that's almost certainly going to be Wi-Fi 7. So, you know, or at least 7 will. I don't think they're going to make it optional. I think it'll just be included, but yeah, you never know. There's a possibility they'd make it an optional thing, kind of like how the Mac Mini has a 1 gigabit port. Unless you pay a little extra, then you get a 10 gigabit port. Which also, anyone who's buying a Mac Mini and you don't get a 10 gigabit port, what happened in your life? You should really consider your decisions. Okay, anyway. So, yeah, the thing is, I think when it comes down to client devices, everything else in the list definitely does not have high-speed requirements. It really comes down to those 3 to 4 kinds of things. And I think even then, streaming sticks mostly don't need it unless you have a lot of them in operation or a lot of congestion issues. And, you know, your phone, for the most part, you're probably not going to notice it, whatever you're on. You're not going to notice or care unless, man,
until you get to
circumstances.
Until you get to like cloud streaming, then it's noticeable, or like local, you know, Xbox, PlayStation stuff.
Yeah, okay. Local stuff can be a bit of a different case, but I think that's a rarity. And very notably, very, very few people have internet speeds that come anywhere close to the speeds that you get over Wi-Fi, even 6. Wi-Fi 6 blows away almost every person's internet connection, so I wouldn't worry too much about any of that stuff. But you're right, local stuff can far exceed this in certain circumstances.
Person said one of my relatives' routers only ran on 2.4 gigahertz, and the Wi-Fi would cut out whenever the microwave was on.
Oh yeah.
I like the idea of, like, you know, everyone in like old timey times was like, get off the phone, I need to be on the internet. Now it's like, stop making popcorn, I need to get on the internet.
Stop making popcorn, we're watching Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the Eero doesn't have 6 gigahertz. It's kind of silly. Other change though is that the Eeros, I believe, on all the nodes have 2 Ethernet ports, which is something that they did on the Pros, but the base model, I know this was true for the Eero 6. This is the one I had. I don't know if this was true for if there was a normal Eero 6E. I don't remember if that was ever a thing. I know there was a Pro, but before this, on the base Eero systems, there were no Ethernet ports on the extra nodes at all. So like, if you had something that like you wanted to be on a wired connection, at least to a node, no, sorry, can't do that. Or you need to go do what I did for my family's house because they had Eero 6. Bad decision there for me, but I ended up getting a refurb single unit Eero 6 Pro for this, because you can mix and match the Pro and non-Pro nodes. But Yeah, they just didn't put Ethernet ports on any of the other mesh nodes. So now they finally did, so that's nice. Um, and they mentioned that. Um, I'm just checking, make sure I'm not gonna give false information again. Um, Supposedly, the mesh nodes are still about up to 2,000 square feet. Kind of the same rules as all mesh unit applies. Like you might need, you know, the number of units you actually need depends on your space and what your walls are made out of and whatnot. Um, I will say I don't believe this fixes any of my other complaints with Eero stuff, which is why I'm still pretty happy with my Asus Wi-Fi 7 routers, where Eero, I believe, still doesn't let you turn off Wi-Fi on individual nodes. So in my case, I have a one-bedroom apartment where I absolutely do not want mesh. Mesh will instantly kill my network performance. I don't need it, but I need some stuff on a wired connection. And with Eero, it's just like, oh, can't do that. Sorry. That's going to be a mesh node. Nothing you can do about it. I don't believe they've changed that. Eero also has a lot of features locked behind a subscription that are definitely do not have any kind of justification for being that. Like it like long-term network stats, like where it shows how much data each device is using. They have a thing where you can one of the subscription features is still the ability to switch to a phone as a backup internet source, but it's like just you're just like hotspotting from your phone. There's not like a service there. It's just using the phone and cell you already have. So it's like there's still a lot of that stuff with Eero that I'm not happy about, and that's why I sold my Eeros and got Asus routers, which admittedly do not have like the nicest software experience, but I can configure them exactly how I want, and no subscription. So I'm pretty happy with my choices.
That's awesome. Okay. So yeah. Uh really quick, I'm going to take the brief moment to hammer a little bit of the point of Wi-Fi 7 in general. It's nice. Certainly, if you're due for an upgrade to your network equipment, or if you're in a situation kind of like Corbin where congestion is just a big problem, then yeah, make the investment, get some Wi-Fi 7 routers. And to be fair, if you're buying new wireless networking equipment today, it's not the greatest market yet for Wi-Fi 7 equipment, but it's not bad. I would say at this stage, I wouldn't buy anything less than 7. I could see in maybe some instances it makes sense to buy 6E, but only if you're getting like a really good price.
Yeah, and like again, even if you have no devices with Wi-Fi 7 right now, and you might not for a while, the mesh nodes are still using it. They're still getting those benefits. So, if you have a phone with Wi-Fi 6 or 5 or whatever, it's still, you're still getting some latency and performance boost in the packets that come to you via a mesh node. So there's some benefit there.
Yeah. Now, all that said, because we're always kind of looking forward with stuff and kind of trying to judge things, I think it's worth highlighting Wi-Fi 8. It is a thing that is expected, but it's not expected until 2028. So if you're sitting around thinking, well, shouldn't I just wait for the next thing? In this instance, if you're thinking about buying something today, I would not try waiting. Wi-Fi 8 is definitely not going to be happening anytime super soon. And even when, bear in mind, like, if the spec happens in 2028, there will probably be hardware in 2027 that uses the spec as it is written at that point and will very likely, continue to work just fine. But even then, you're probably not going to get the hardware that you'll actually want to own probably won't come out until mid to late 2028, if not possibly 2029. So yeah, and then obviously the client devices that can make use of it, that's also going to be a very short list until 2029, 2030 territory. So in other words, factor those things in. But yeah, right now, if you're buying something new, go for Wi-Fi 7, because frankly, you're future-proofing very, very well doing that. I wouldn't wait for Wi-Fi 8, and if you don't need to upgrade for any particular reason, then yeah, actually just stay on what you got. Because seriously, there really is so little advantage in most cases of moving up, unless you have tons and tons of data moving across your local network. Emphasis on that, because unless your internet connection is pretty fast, way, way higher than you probably think it needs to be, you're probably not actually going to use any of this stuff. So, stuff like local network gaming, like Corbin mentioned, if you're moving lots of stuff between, let's say, a computer and a NAS or some central server, or in theory, maybe if you're doing other big stuff internally, or maybe if you run a lot of IP cameras around your house, those kinds of things might justify it. But for the most part, you probably just won't see any benefits at all from upgrading. So
yeah. So maybe buy a Wi-Fi 7 router, but probably not this one. That's our
yes,
takeaway.
That too. Okay, so really quick, before we move on to the next topic, which I assume we're done with this one.
Yep.
Okay. Really quick, I have to make fun of this because this is the stupidest thing I have. I have to. So I just got an email 20 minutes ago. And really quick, I am changing the browser selection so I have it on the right. What's this one gonna be? Yeah, here we go. Okay. I got this email from Twitch. Now, at the top of the show, I mentioned Twitch has officially changed some of their policies, and as a result, accounts, the big thing they're talking about is violations will now have expiration dates. So longtime streamers who have racked up little violations over the years, for the most part, those violations could eventually lead to account suspensions. And those infractions can now expire, so longtime streamers aren't being penalized just for being on the network for ages. They also noted, and this is where it becomes a little more relevant to me, if your account was previously suspended, you can now apply to have it reinstated, and apparently their appeal process is going to get a little bit better, or that's kind of what's implied, but I don't think that's actually true. Anyway, so at some point I'm going to apply to have my account reinstated. All right. But I also just got this email. Action required. Please review your highlights and upload storage. Now note, this is for my old channel. 4 years or so? Longer, maybe? I don't remember exactly, but it's been a long time. Quote, we'll be enforcing a 100-hour maximum storage limits for highlights and uploads starting April 19th, 2025. Your channel is currently over the limit. I I literally can't log in to do anything about this. So they're sending me this email to warn me that I'm, you know, they're going to take some action on my channel. And it's like, okay, what was I supposed to do here, guys? How is it a company can be this prolifically inept that they don't understand that they've locked me out of being able to fix the thing that they're yelling about? And the fact that I still get so many emails from Twitch about my account, even though it's been suspended for several years now. What? I want to meet the developers. I want to meet the developers. That's it. I want to meet the developers because I genuinely want to. I want to see how obvious it is that they are really high. I mean, really high all the time. Okay, now mocking them aside, this is just wild. Anyway, so yep, I figured I'd point that out because it's hilarious. Before we move on to final topic, Corbin, anything you care to say
Nope.
on that, or just move on?
It's funny.
Excellent. I agree. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled mocking. iPhone 16e, baby. This is what you were all waiting for, right? We're gonna tell you exactly why no one should buy it and why everyone, or not everyone, but why so many people are gonna buy this phone. So today,
Actually, I don't even know if that's true, but
I think it is, but yeah, we'll get to that after we discuss what it is first. And the simple answer is it is an iPhone 16, but somewhat reduced in many ways.
Yeah. So in recent history, Apple has had a very determined like budget phone that was a very old iPhone with the guts of a slightly newer iPhone. So ever since they switched over to this, the iPhone 6e started off as like iPhone 4 body with like newer guts in it, and then they like slightly bumped it up to like an iPhone 8, I think, with like iPhone 13 guts.
I think it's a little raw to call or to say that they're slightly newer guts, because for the most part,
that's
the chips they're putting into these are the same as the current gen when they come out. Now, granted, the SEs.
I think it's a little bit further back, but yeah.
I think they're the bin down versions. You know, like the ones that might have like one core fewer operating or something. But yeah, still they're usually the current generation internals with usually the current generation main camera, and then like everything else gets somehow a little bit corner cut, compromised in whatever way. But yeah, it's usually just the current phone. And then of course, but to be fair, it's also a phone that's usually getting released like, what is it, about 8 months after the current model, I think is. Wait, no. Yeah. Is that right?
No, it's been in, like, they haven't done it on a yearly basis.
Well, yeah. It's obviously not on a yearly basis, but I mean, anytime the SE comes out, it's always kind of around the start of the year. So it's probably about 5 to 6 months after the base model, or after the new generation is announced. Then, like, that many months later, the SE, when an SE year happens, they come out with it, and it's based on those same guts, but compromised. Anyway, sorry, I didn't want to derail.
Yeah,
they're usually modern, but they're
it's in an old frame, and
yes.
So that progressively came like the main issue was that Apple kept the iPhone 6e on the old iPhone form factor where it had a home button and a smaller screen and lightning port, and that was becoming progressively less of a deal. I used the last iPhone SE for a while as my main phone, and I mostly liked it, but you can tell uh, apps and websites and also some of the system is not designed for those size screens anymore. Especially because, and you can tell because Apple ships it with like a very ridiculous pixel density by default, and I had to bump it up. And like I don't have like I have perfectly good vision, and I was like, this is too small for me. I need to bump this up, and then of course makes the problem worse. So Apple has now is changing tactics with this phone. So instead of building a purpose-built like mid-range thing, they are taking the base iPhone and making it slightly worse and slightly cheaper. So we're kind of back to like a iPhone XR kind of deal, a like Galaxy S10e situation. Um, so the iPhone 16e, I mean, when you look at it, it looks like the iPhone 16 almost. It has the same 6.1-inch screen size. So yes, Apple's not making a small phone anymore. Like I hate it too, but I understand this is just like how this works now. And if you ship a small phone now, it's going to be a compromised experience. And I will write a post about that someday. I don't know when. But yeah, 6.1-inch screen. It has emergency SOS. It has USB-C. It has Wi-Fi. Well, we'll get to the wireless stuff actually, but it has like the Find My with satellite. It has Apple Intelligence because it has a not the same, but a very similar chipset to the iPhone 16. So this is mostly a 16. So the sorry. Even down to having like the same actual, I say same action button as the 16 line where you can, remap it to open the camera or do other stuff. So pretty good so far. However, there are a lot of small differences. And I should also say this is $200 cheaper than the base iPhone 16. This starts at $600. Base iPhone 16 is $800, and the iPhone SE started at $420. So big jump in pricing. Now, granted, it does again have a newer chip. It has 128 gigs capacity as the base. The old phone was still 64, and that was also getting a little bit silly. So you may be thinking, wow, this seems like a good deal. They made an iPhone 16 but cheaper. What's the catch? There are many catches. Most of them are not obvious. So first thing you might notice is that there's only one camera. Apple says it made a hybrid 2-in-1 camera system that supposedly captures photos and videos basically the same as the base iPhone 16. But there's no ultra wide lens, so you don't get the 0.5 zoom level. Also, I noticed on Apple specs page there's no macro photography mode or spatial photos and videos, which makes sense because like for spatial stuff you actually need another lens some distance away so it can judge 3D distances. I have a suspicion this might also make the phone worse at portrait photos than the other iPhones because they can't get data from the other lens. Apple did make iPhones with one lens with portrait mode, so like I'm sure it'll still kind of work, but it'll probably be worse.
Yeah, it's gonna have a lot of trouble doing the thing where like detecting spots where it can see through something. Like if someone's standing there and their arms like against their hip or their fist against their hip and kind of creating a triangle, like that space in between your arm and your body is going to be It's going to have more trouble cutting that out.
Yeah, it's entirely guessing with software versus on other iPhones where I'm assuming it's software plus some data from the other lenses.
Exactly.
Um, so, oh, do you have anything?
I'll get in later.
Okay. Okay. Um, so camera situation's a little bit weird. You might also notice the display is a little bit different. It has a little bit chunkier bezels around the screen. It's not the exact same edge to edge design. And it has a notch. So this doesn't have the like dynamic island thing that the newer iPhones have. This has the iPhone 13 and older style notch, which is fine. That's a price reduction that makes total sense to me. Still looks very nice. Still looks like a fine phone. The display is also a little bit different. I noticed in the specs page it doesn't get quite as bright as the one on the 16, but it's still an OLED screen. And that is actually an issue that someone brought up to me on, I think it was Mastodon, where some people were buying the iPhone SEs because it was the last LCD phone that Apple made. And the OLED screens on iPhones have something with the refresh rate that actually makes some people motion sick. So there's no longer an option for those people. So sorry. You gotta go find an Android phone, I guess. So beyond that, it gets to things that you might not notice. So big one is there's no MagSafe support. You get Qi charging just like the iPhone SE had. You can plop it on a charger, but there's no magnets. And I heard something about this, but I don't know if it's embargoed or not. I'm just doing a quick Google search to check. Okay, it doesn't seem like it's okay, so I probably can't say that yet. All right. Yeah, so no magnets on this, which is not good. That's really silly.
That is your professional opinion. It is extremely not good.
It is extremely not good. That's definitely, I moved from the last iPhone 16 to an iPhone 15 when the 15 came out, and MagSafe is really nice, and I used it on my Galaxy phones before that with the Moment cases, and it's a nice thing to have, and it seems weird to me that Apple would do that.
Okay, I will jump in on the MagSafe thing right now. So first off, some cases have the magnets in them. They're not just metal rings, they actually have magnets. And your phone, it very likely is not the chief magnet. I mean, MagSafe on the phone does have a magnet in it, but usually that's not as strong as the magnet that you would be attaching from the accessory that you would be connecting to the phone via MagSafe. So, in all likelihood, what this means is, yeah, the phone doesn't actually have proper MagSafe in it, and it probably doesn't have the metallic ring that would be, or a metallic ring that would be good to magnetize to. But if you put a case on it and the case itself has a magnetic ring, you're fine. That will replace it just as well. So
we're assuming that will be a thing with this phone, but we'll have to wait and see.
What, cases that have rings in them?
Yeah.
That'll be a thing. Other people make them. I don't even question this at all.
Yeah.
Look, Moment has been making MagSafe cases for Android phones for years. And that's just Moment. Like Bellroy does it, or I think Bellroy does it. There are so many. Go search on Amazon for various MagSafe compatible cases for Android phones. You will find buttloads of them. There's tons. So Android phones that don't have MagSafe built in, they absolutely can still use this. So I don't think that this is a problem. It's less ideal because that means that the bare phone wouldn't be able to use MagSafe. But if you put your phone in a case anyway, this is a non-issue. Or it can be a non-issue. You just have to make sure you're buying a suitable case. Which, to be fair, if you were buying a case to put on an iPhone, you probably should be getting one that also enhances MagSafe.
Well, I mean, I was ignorant, and when I was buying the first case for my iPhone 15, I was like, well, the phone has magnets in it, so I can just get a case that, the magnets are no, the magnets got to be in the case too, or else your phone will fall off every MagSafe thing.
Like, it'll work. You can put it on there, but every millimeter away that case adds, it is really diminishing the effect of those magnets.
It doesn't even really work. Like I have a just like, TPU case, whatever, for my iPhone. And with that on, the iPhone will not stick to my charging stand at all. It'll just immediately fall off.
Wow, that's I've heard people say that, but
yeah. Like it'll still work for like if you have like a MagSafe, like the little charger thing like on a desk, it'll still like that's fine, but like as soon as you're putting like any weight on, plop.
Yikes.
Your phone's falling. Anyway, so no MagSafe. Pretty silly.
One other note I do wonder about, and I don't know what this necessarily will mean, but technically Apple does do other things with MagSafe. And I know that's kind of a weird statement to make, and it kind of there's some weird implications to this, but basically if you attach something via MagSafe, the phone detects this and can make additional use of that information. And this, I'm not talking about charging with Qi. I'm talking about various other ways that it can react to the fact that it's attached to something with MagSafe. And as a result, or the thing is, I'm assuming that if they don't have quote unquote MagSafe support in the phone, that detection probably also won't work.
Right.
Now, how much impact that has on usefulness, I don't know. And I'm assuming it isn't much. But it might matter in some rare instances. So, even if you got a case, it might have minor impacts on a neat little niche function here or there. Probably not an issue, but worth noting.
I don't know. I know Apple discontinued theirs, but I don't know if there's third-party ones that work in the same way. But Apple did have that little chargeable MagSafe battery puck thing,
right?
That you could put on the back of iPhones, and the battery level of that did get reported back to the iPhone. It would show up in the UI.
I think that is a feature of the Qi protocol, though, or Qi 2.
Okay.
I think Qi 2 allows a little bit of data to be transmitted along with the signal, which I think it's using for reporting. That, or honestly, it could be doing it over NFC. There's a lot of ways that they could be doing that.
Yeah, so no built-in MagSafe, pretty silly. Also, very small thing, but that action button, the camera button, does not have the touch controls of the iPhone 16. So during the presentations when Apple was showing you, holding up your iPhone 16 and moving the touch control to change the zoom level or whatever, that doesn't work. I feel like that's a pretty easy cost cutting thing. That doesn't really matter all that much, but it is there.
Part of me thinks that should matter, but from everything I've heard people say that have used that feature or tried to use that feature, they think it's not very good. So I think in the end it doesn't matter, but it's more because that feature was bad to begin with.
Yeah. So another thing that's different, and this one for me is the absolute don't pre-order this phone. You need to wait for reviews. You need to wait maybe a couple months to see how this shakes out. This is Apple's first phone with a with their own modem. This has the Apple C1 modem in it. This is something that has been reported about for years. Apple bought Intel's phone modem division in 2019 with the express purpose of making their own modems. All modern iPhones have used Qualcomm modems, which is really like the last like big piece of hardware in the phones that Apple doesn't make in terms of internal hardware. Like, you know, the screens are from Samsung or whoever, but like in terms of the actual like internals of the phone, they've been buying modems from Qualcomm. So, you know, Apple in its never-ending effort to achieve maximum vertical integration has been trying to remove that for a while. And it was reported that the next iPhone SE would have one of those modems, and sure enough, this phone has it. And Intel's modems, when they were in iPhones, were not good. There were people I remember this on like, you know, Mac Rumors forums comparing, you know, trying to figure out like, did this iPhone I just bought have the Intel modem? Does this have the, you know, mark of the devil? You know, because the Intel modems in those iPhones were noticeably performing worse than the Qualcomm modems and would sometimes have an impact on battery life. I don't expect Apple would ship a phone that just like completely fails at phone things, but I do think, given what we've seen from iPhones with Intel modems and these, you know, this is the same chain of hardware development and teams as those Intel modems. I'm not super hopeful these are directly comparable to what we get on the Qualcomm modems on iPhones. And I do think that just, you know, with how important that is to the phone, like that is how your phone is connecting to cell networks and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. That is a very important component that we don't know how well it works yet. So like personally, that would be my number one deal breaker. Is like, I need to see people buying this and wait a couple months to wait for the inevitable issues to pop up, because like this is one of those things also that's very difficult to test before you put your product in the hands of thousands and millions of people who are going to try this in areas you didn't bring your test iPhone units into. You know, how does it work on all the different types of 5G and 4G and LTE networks? How does it work with the satellite SOS? Corbin forgets the iPhone 4. Yeah, that is the one time Apple made a phone that just like didn't work, but that was a while ago. So yeah, that would be my main thing is like, don't pre-order this iPhone, but not necessarily because it's like a bad value or whatever. Don't pre-order it because it has Apple's first attempt to make a modem in it, and we don't know how that's going to shake out yet. I know just from looking at the specs sheet, I did notice it does not support. So, you know, compared to the iPhone 16 with its Qualcomm modem, this does not support millimeter wave 5G. It's only sub 6 gigahertz, which who cares? That's easy thing to take out. No one's using that. It doesn't matter. It's also only Wi-Fi 6 versus Wi-Fi 7 in the rest of the iPhone 16s. So that's a bigger one. That kind of sucks. And that's just what we see on paper. We don't know anything about like performance and stuff yet, which would be my, you know, my hesitation.
So, yeah. When you start looking over this whole list, there's a part of me that thinks saving $200 on the price kind of makes sense. Like a lot of the sacrifices they made, I can kind of see how those things add up to basically $200-ish worth of savings. You know, we don't know what the industrial design cost of putting MagSafe in might be, but I assume it's not super, or I assume it's not super expensive, but I assume it adds up and is a meaningful difference. Obviously, chopping down to a single camera, that's saving actually probably a pretty significant amount. Um, and again, things like changing the action button to be non-touch sensitive, putting in their own modem, which actually presumably should be saving them money, but maybe we don't know. Using the old screen, I can just see how these things add up, and it makes sense that yeah, about 200 less is probably the right price for this. That being said, it's kind of a shame that this is also significantly more expensive than an iPhone SE would have been. That feels like kind of a big sacrifice to shift away from what an iPhone SE kind of was. And don't get me wrong, I think realistically we knew there was no way this was going to be priced like an iPhone SE was. For one, phones got bigger. Simple as that. Any of the older generation iPhone SEs, they were just smaller phones. Eventually, there would come a point where the price had to go up in order for them to continue making something that's just physically that much larger. Also, I have a feeling Apple and Diablo's kind of tapping into it perfectly there by saying, yeah, the trade war. I think this price is higher preemptively because they know they're gonna, at some point, the prices on imports are gonna go up, and Apple's sitting there saying, we don't want to raise prices halfway through the life of this product or even in a few months, so let's just preemptively charge more now, and then this will just always stay the same price. I mean, that's speculation. It's not based on anything firm, but it also completely makes sense because Apple has made moves like this before. It's a little bit how Apple reached the point of just pricing more for everything anyway.
Yeah, I mean, my I don't. This is a very weird phone. Like, I don't know if this phone has a reason to exist.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And
you beat me to what I was waiting. Or I
yeah,
was going to say next.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to push it. But like the iPhone SE, it was very far from the price of like a normal iPhone. It was in like its own little region. It was like low mid-range phone in the same exact way that for a while the Pixel A phones were to the normal Pixels. Now that line is blurred because they're using the same chipsets and the prices are closer, but like still a difference there. But this is just a slightly worse iPhone 16, which in a vacuum is a good idea. Like, yeah, we should have more options for phones at lower price points so they're more accessible. However, Apple already does this. They already sell last year's iPhones and the iPhones before that, as we'll get to in a second, at declining prices. Like when I was writing this article, I went to Verizon and T-Mobile's website and I looked up iPhone 15, and Verizon will give you one for free if you're on a new line, and on T-Mobile it's like $100 or something in bill credits. So like I don't know, like if it was my money, I would be buying an iPhone 15 over this any day of the week. And I say that as someone who has had an iPhone 15 for 2 years. Like it's good. It's fine. And this has more cameras than the 16E, and it has the Qualcomm modem that is tried and tested. It doesn't have the AI or the action button or whatever, but like I feel like the other things matter more. So like I don't know where this makes sense, especially considering long-term support for iPhones is still very good. To the point where like if you're buying, an iPhone 14 even today, you're gonna get updates for a while. Like probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 more years, maybe.
Just to punctuate your point, I think the way to say it or frame it is it's better to buy for the specs that you want rather than the age of the phone that you
Right.
get. Because yeah, if you want, let's say, the most number of cameras, it's almost better to buy last year's pro model than to buy this year's base model, if price is a concern, because you can get last year's pro model for cheaper and get all the cameras you want, and the difference in camera quality is probably not there.
Yeah.
And the support on the phone is going to last long enough that you will be tired of and done with that phone before support ends, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Like with Android phones, this is the age is much more of a factor because so many of them are supported for very short amount of time, to the point where like until recently,
I was
like
going
you
to say
should not,
that's
you should,
not
yeah,
true anymore,
I
but
know that's changed now, but like until recently, like I would have like absolutely do not buy an Android phone that's 2 years old. That's not a good use of your money. However, now Samsung and Google are pushing like 7 years, so it's sort of in the same range as Apple now, where it's like it's okay if it's a year old and you can get a good deal on it,
all that being
or
said,
even 2 years.
if you do get anything older than about a year, just foot the bill and have the battery replaced like when you get it or shortly after.
Yeah.
Because the battery's the one thing where you'll feel that 2 years of age.
Well, I mean, I was mostly talking about like new stock. Like Apple still has new stock of the 15 and maybe even the 14 still.
You say
Um,
new stock, but bear in mind,
right.
a lot of
It
that stuff was
is
still manufactured
right. It's
whenever.
been in a box for a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, the date on that battery is manufacturing date for the battery, not when you open the box. So anyway,
Yeah. So yeah, like I can't imagine any world where the iPhone 6e is a better value than just buying the previous iPhone. Like maybe there are some edge cases. Like I know the options kind of suck if you're buying these unlocked. Um, like you can really only get on new unlocked iPhones from Apple, and Apple doesn't really do the discounts on their website. That's usually a thing that the carriers are doing. So like I don't doubt that there's some edge situations where it makes sense. Like maybe you really need the latest chipset because like you want to play one of the games, like one of the 5 games that need absolutely the latest chipsets. Although this doesn't even have like the best one that some games are being built for in the Pro phones, but you know, for 90% of people, I would say just get the last year's iPhone or even last year's Pro iPhone, like you said. Um,
okay,
so yeah, so I don't know where this makes sense. Maybe pricing is better in some other countries. I saw this is also like even more of a price hike in Canada, so the Canadian people were even more like complaining about this.
yeah, which makes all the sense in the world. Okay, so uh, actually, it's funny because you did not hit at all what I was about to hit. So we did not end up with you did not end up stealing topic from me. So I don't know why this phone exists for a different reason. And let me preface by saying I absolutely see a reason why this exists, but in a second I'm going to shoot that down. So for the customer that is out there saying, I want just the brand new phone, effectively, but I want it to have, I don't take pictures, so I don't care that it only has the one camera. And I don't use my phone on any MagSafe stuff, so I don't care if it doesn't have MagSafe. And hey, the action button, it's cool, it has that, I'm gonna use it, but the touch controls, no one else seems to like them, so I don't care either. And the dynamic island thing, like some people won't care about that, so nor should they. So yeah, you might be fine letting all these things go by. And there were a few other things that you'd be giving up too, like I have to mention it, Apple AI, or sorry, Apple Intelligence, whatever. Um, because that, by the way, is also very much missing. Or sorry, I'm saying this wrong. That is one thing that does come on this one. It would be missing if you got an older phone. Sorry, but as you start piecing together, like, this customer exists. There are people who don't take photos, absolutely, and there are people who don't use MagSafe, and there are people who, again, the action buttons, whatever. And there are people who aren't going to care about the lack of dynamic island. And there are definitely people out there who aren't really going to be that impacted by, like, the modem. Especially if maybe, I don't know, maybe you're either just the homebody type that's never really going to use it, and you don't really go on cell networks much anyway. Though this presumably might also impact Wi-Fi. So who knows? Here's the problem, though. I just described a customer that, first off, probably also doesn't care that much about having the latest phone. This is probably a person who would maybe even be happy on the old SE. So the price effectively just went up for that person. That kind of sucks, but it is what it is. But then I start looking at this and questioning how many people fit that full list of things, and how many of them are sitting there going, I could still just spend $200 and get the actual good one. And if anyone out there has ever had an SE, you also are familiar with the one thing that was so wrong with SEs. Well, two things. There was two things always wrong with the SEs. One, they felt their age way faster. And part of that was because they typically had a bit less RAM. A much bigger part of that, I think they were also just using components that degraded a little faster.
Well, it was slightly older chipsets. The storage was limited, and then probably RAM too. And on top of just the design being older.
Yeah. So the second issue is, and this is not surprising at all, but it's also just reality. The old SEs had smaller screens, and as a result, they also had smaller batteries. And when you have a smaller battery, it means that you use up the battery faster, and it usually ends up having a shorter long-term lifespan. So if you had an old SE, chances are that the battery in that thing at about 18 months was probably approaching useless. I mean, not literally, but like the battery life would tumble downwards after about the first year. And at 18 months, you were reaching the point where you probably either shouldn't leave your house for too long with just the phone, or you need to carry like extra battery, a charger, or something. Like, you always need to have some other way to keep your phone moderately full.
Yeah.
So, first off, normal people are probably going to run into that, which this lands into Curvy's first scenario. Who is this phone for? Curvy mentions getting it for high schoolers, or, well, not necessarily high schoolers, but kids' first phone. That sounds good, except after, if this suffers from the same battery situation, kids' first phone isn't that good if you're going to have to replace the battery in, say, 2 years or 16 months or whatever. And I don't know, maybe you're going to get them a new phone by then. That's fine. But if you aren't planning on keeping them on a fairly rapid upgrade cycle, or, well, let's say every 2 years, then yeah, this isn't going to be the phone for you or them. And again, how many people are going to want this phone with these specific compromises? Some people aren't going to care that there's only one camera. Sure. But do they mind that everything else is compromised? I think I think that list starts getting shorter really quick. Um, and I try to think of specialized purposes. Who out there wants a phone that's cheaper, but they don't mind these particular sacrifices? And I'm trying to think of special scenarios. For example, developers, app developers. Maybe if you're someone who's trying to have an app out for both iPhone and Android, and you're mostly an Android developer, but you'd like to have an iPhone to start testing on, you don't want this one. You don't want this one actually for a couple of reasons. The biggest one, of course, is lack of dynamic island. You can't really properly build and test stuff if you don't have a phone that can do that. Though to be fair, if you're an Apple developer who wants a phone that doesn't have that so you can support older phones, this might actually be a good choice for you. But and you won't be able to test things like the touch controls on an action button and so on and so forth. Or if you're I don't know, I had more ideas in my mind earlier, and I've kind of forgotten most of them. But the general principle is, I think a few of these sacrifices and compromises made sense, but there's always something somewhere in this list and all the other items that aren't even in this list where people are going to stop and say, you know what? Here's the deal breaker. I want a phone that does most of this, or I'm fine with a phone that has most of these compromises, but here's the one issue. And that one issue is going to push you consistently back to the 16 or getting a 15 from, getting a better 15 from the previous year. Like, that's where I feel like the deal breaker is. You're always going to be just sitting there going, yeah, but I want this other thing. And I saw somebody mention it somewhere. This phone looks a lot like they said, let's make a phone that has Apple Intelligence and work backwards from there. I don't know.
I said that.
You said that? Okay, I thought it was you,
Yeah.
but I wasn't totally sure. And yeah, I mean, that kind of fits in a really disappointing sort of way, because it does look a lot like a phone where they wanted to make sure that they had the current hardware, even if it is maybe a bin down version of it or something. But
Yeah, and it is slightly different. I forgot to mention that it is slightly different than the A16 that's in the base iPhone. It has, I think, 2 fewer cores.
it's a bin version then. 100% it's
Yeah.
a bin down version.
Well, it was probably gonna. I would assume it has to be modified at least a little bit for the new modem. I don't know if the modem is on the die or not.
It
but
probably is.
yeah, but like it's also slightly different in other ways. Oh yeah, Carson said 1 fewer GPU core. Yeah. So. Yeah, because putting the AI aside, like Apple's, like this has been the case for years. Apple's chips are very good, and like you could totally slap iPhone chip from a year or two ago in this, and it would still run basically the same at most tasks. And that to me would seem like the cost-cutting measure to go, because those older chips are going to be manufactured on different manufacturing nodes than the chips on the newer iPhones, and you could probably do that for cheaper now. But they just put the same, quote unquote, the same chip as the 16 in here. I feel like that wasn't the best cost-cutting compromise. I don't know. Maybe it does make, maybe Apple is just so vertically integrated that it is actually fine. Because Google does this now as well. The the Pixel A and Pixel phones have the same SoC, I believe.
I would put money on what they did is they realized that their rejection rate on iPhone or on A18 chips. I'd almost bet that their rejection rate, if we look at it, they probably had, I don't know, I'm just going to make up a number, but let's say that they had a 4 or 6% rejection rate. That might be too high, it might be too low. I really don't know. But I bet if you then look at what comes out of there that just happens to be short a couple of cores, like just, the cores that were not usable, I bet that number probably comes out to just about how many of these they think they're going to sell.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm so confident that these are just the exact same chips, but they're the lower bin versions where they just had they had one or two more faulty cores that they just couldn't use. So toss those chips to the side, let them live in a storage space, and at some point it's like, okay, we're gonna make the 16E, that's gonna get these chips. So it's literally gonna be the same chip, but a couple of disabled cores. Which, I mean, that is a good use of the hardware. I think that's actually a smart thing to do. It's either put them into a lower spec iPhone, or you stick them in something else like, well, a good example is that's what they did with the AirPod Max, I think it was. I don't know. One of their, or was it all of their speakers? Whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyway, they were using old iPhone chips in their speakers. And they were, they weren't just over manufacturing those chips. They were using bin down versions that weren't useful for anything else. Like they couldn't.
Don't need GPU cores on that.
No, they don't. So yeah, I would almost bet money that's exactly what this is. These are just the bin down chips, and there's nothing wrong with that. They've spent months manufacturing A18 chips. So if you've got this big stockpile that you've got to do something with, why not put them into a cheaper phone? The only thing is, at that point, now we're starting to get into the, is it worth it to save $200? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. If you can spread it out over monthly payments, it's probably not worth it. If you're paying for it all up front, maybe saving $200 is. I don't know. It depends on circumstance, but yeah. To me, I can see why there'd be people who want this phone, but I think if they're sitting down really making, like, evaluating everything about it, I also think there's a whole lot of people who would say, no, you know what? Never mind. Give me either the real 16 or give me an older 15.
Yeah,
one or the other.
Yeah, and one of the points of contention with the iPhone 6e was that compared to every other Android phone in the price range, it was stupid. Like you compare that to I think Samsung had like the Galaxy A50 series in that price range. Those phones are really good. Pixel A phones pretty good. Now the cheaper iPhone has the same like full size screen and USB-C port and stuff as Android phones in this category, but the Android phones in this category are now cheaper.
Yeah.
Like I checked the Pixel 8a store page while I was writing the news article for this. It's on sale for $400. I think 400. Let me check that. I spread a lot of false information today. I'd like to. Yeah, $400. $400 for a Pixel 8a. Like if you don't, there's gonna be the people who need iMessage and stuff, but like if you don't get that,
Yeah.
like that's a better buy. Um, like I the iPhone SE was a tough sell for a lot of reasons, and I feel like this phone is an even tougher sell for completely different reasons. Like it completely skipped over to a different product segment where there are now different priorities. Um, again, like if Apple like stopped selling old iPhones or like supported them differently, like this would be a different conversation. But like I don't I think like 90% of people should buy an old iPhone instead of this or an Android phone. Um and I mean like if you're shopping if you're shopping for under like $500, you need to get an Android phone or you get like a used iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe some carriers still have stock of like a 13 or 14 somewhere, but that's not likely. Um, so yeah, disappointed Apple. Disappointed. This is
So
not a good phone. And we don't even know how bad the modem is yet.
yeah, the modem may turn out to be either really horrible, it roughly equal, and even if it is better, no one's gonna really notice. Because let's be honest, the Qualcomm modems, despite having maybe a few issues, generally have been pretty good. So, uh, with all that said, I have to say the unfortunate truth, which is also, let's be honest, these things are probably going to sell pretty well. Not crazy well. I don't think it's going to be like the iPhone SE2, was it? I think that was the one that was like surprisingly well sold. But I think that this is going to tap into that audience that's still saying, you know what, we got to have an iPhone. We need to have an iPhone. We want to have an iPhone, but we also don't want to spend like that crazy nearly $1,000 price tag just so we can have an iPhone. And yeah, I think this will still sell pretty well, and a lot of people buy it for all the reasons that we said. Oh, this is someone who would buy this, but I think a lot of those people aren't even going to notice any of this stuff until they already have it. And even once they have it, they're just going to be like, well, I'll learn to live with this thing not being that good, or this other thing not being the way I thought, or, oh, I forgot this was going to be a thing. Like, the only part of this list I think anyone's going to notice is, oh yeah, it only has one camera. All the rest of it, people are just going to gloss right over. They're going to assume it's all fine. And it probably is fine, because most of these things are not really that big of a deal. Until, again, 18 months in, 2 years. Yeah. Or until that first time that you're like, oh, I want to, I want to do this thing with it. Oh, I can't use MagSafe with it unless I buy a case. Or stuff like that. I think those are going to be the spots where people will regret the purchase maybe down the road, or maybe they won't regret it. They'll just get it and kind of realize, oh yeah, maybe next time I'll just get the real one instead of the cut down version. So yeah, I think it's still going to sell well. I'm just not entirely sure if it should.
I mean, I'm sure it'll sell because it's like it says iPhone 16. That's the newest one, so
yeah, pretty much.
It's got that going for it. So yeah, and then also in the related news, Apple has discontinued the iPhone 14. So that's not an option for a new iPhone anymore. This usually happens when Apple introduces like the subsequent iPhone. So like when the iPhone 16 comes out, that would be around when the 14 goes away. So it actually lasted a little bit longer here than I believe it usually does. I think that's how it usually works.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So yeah, so you can't buy an iPhone 14 anymore. iPhone 14 was mostly just notable because it was the first one with the dynamic island, and I believe the first one with emergency like satellite stuff.
Should be yes, because
Yeah,
it was gonna, the emergency satellite thing was gonna be up last year. Then they decided to extend it another year. So
yeah,
yeah,
and also the last iPhone with Lightning port. So now that this is gone and the iPhone SE is gone, Apple no longer sells iPhones at all with Lightning. Obviously, they still exist everywhere and will be for many years to come. But
yeah,
yeah,
but that
so
I think at least not having any more available is a beautiful shift in things, and at least will not be putting new ones into the world. Um,
yeah, I mean, Apple already had to stop selling this and the SE in Europe because the timeline requirement for the European Union's USB-C law went into effect. So
yeah.
that was kind of funny.
And correct me if I'm wrong. They, I think there's what, either no iPads or only one left that's Lightning. I think all of them were turned to USB-C, right?
All the current ones are USB-C. There is still that ninth gen, I think, or whatever, that like still shows up on sale sometimes, that has the home button and the lightning, but I think that one might actually be dead now. I haven't seen a sale on that pop up in a while.
Okay. Well, and if it's not sold directly from Apple, I'm going to assume that those are just old stock that are being cleared out.
Yeah, I mean it was being sold through Apple, but like I think Apple just made a crap ton of them for like education and didn't sell them or something because they were just permanently on sale. And I know this because like like Mac Rumors and a bunch of other websites for months would be like this iPad just dropped in price to like $280. And I saw that headline like 15 times for months. It's like, guys, it's not a sale if it's always that price.
Yeah.
You can't keep saying that, guys. It's not real.
But they can, and they do.
They did. Okay, so I just went to Amazon, and it is still on Amazon, but it's sold by Adorama as a third-party store on Amazon. So Apple/Amazon is out of stock on that finally. So let me check the 256 gig. Oh, that's just gone. That one's gone. Okay. So yeah, that one's still. You might still be able to find a new one of those, but Apple's done.
Yeah. So that's good. At least Lightning is essentially dead in all their products. Hooray.
Yeah. Lightning's been defeated. Also, Touch ID. No more Touch ID.
True, that happened a while ago, didn't it? Oh wait, I guess
no,
not. Okay.
no, because the SE had it, and also the stupid iPad.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
I'm a little bit bummed about that one. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I know, like it didn't really gel with how phones are designed now, where there's an expectation of a taller screen, so a taller screen plus room for a button. I understand that's kind of a hard sell. I wish they would have found a way to make it work because I still don't really like Face ID. And I especially would like the button on the iPad. You could definitely fit on the iPad. Even if it did get a little bit weird when like you would rotate the iPad and it can rotate the gestures and software, but not the button. But I don't know. I like the button. You could put more buttons on there, you know, make it like Galaxy S3, put a physical back button on there too, and recents, and put an action button on the front, right? You can do that.
So
go wild with it.
Not necessarily relating to the iPad, but certainly the iPhone. I still hold to the belief that They could have put a Touch ID button on the rear side. That way you can still have full screen up front, no bezels,
Yeah.
but the rear could have a Touch ID button right where the Apple logo is, which guarantees no one covers up the Apple logo. And, and cases can just have the cutout in the back, which I know
Yeah.
some people think that's an inelegant solution. Fine, they can put a case on it. They can use Face ID if they want, but yeah, Touch ID. I'm sorry, but I do not want a phone that only relies on its camera.
Man,
I did not like it in the Pixel 4. I have loved having some sort of Touch ID on every phone other than that.
Yeah, that was peak phone design where like I'm sure a lot of those touch sensors were like the least secure thing ever built. But you know what? It was so nice to take my phone out of my pocket and it is unlocked before it reaches my face.
Yes.
That was especially on, I think it was like some OnePlus phone I had that had like just a stupid fast fingerprint sensor. And I had the Galaxy, well, I still have it. I have the Galaxy S10e that had the fingerprint sensor on the side where the power button was. So like as soon as I touch my phone, it is unlocked. That was peak. And we've gone backwards from that.
Yeah, we've definitely regressed. I will say one
And yeah, Carson said in-display fingerprint sensor. Yeah, that was downhill. That was like worst of all possibilities. Like I can't even. Some phones are definitely better than that at others. I think I had a few that were stinkers with that. Where like it was too narrow of a region where like I can't do the thing where it's unlocked when it gets to my hand because I don't know where the finger should go. But I know some of them were better than others.
Okay, so just taking these in order. First, the fingerprint button on the side of the phone, like the Motorola you described. I've tried that. I don't think that's a good thing. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not good either. It's objectively bad.
Also, an issue for left-handed people.
It
Because they usually
have to
design
be.
them where it's like where your thumb goes, and if you're lifting up with the other hand.
Right, but a lot of times your pointer finger can also end up that high.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to be, but it depends on hand size.
I think it's in the drawer behind me.
Um, let's see. Carson pointing out Pixel 8 and Pixel 9 do Class 3 face unlock. Yes, they do, and that's fine and all. If that's what you're looking for. So yeah. I'm not a fan of taking anything away from people. I like the idea of having more options. Very notably, I've disabled face unlock on both the Pixel. Well, I don't have a Pixel 8 anymore. I swapped it for a Pixel 9, but I disabled face unlock on both phones because I just don't like it. It does not work with my idea of how I want to use my phone.
I do have some show and tell. So I do have my S10e right here that does have the side fingerprint sensor. So how I was using it is like I would pick up my phone and then that's just kind of where my thumb goes and phone is unlocked, which was nice. And then I do have my iPhone SE2, or this might be the original actually. I need to power this on and like fully set it up again.
Size, I would almost guess that's the original SE.
Yeah. So I sold my the more recent SE, but I still have this one. And it's very cute. Take the case off. Okay, yeah, this just says the original SE. It's very small. It's even got the like iPhone 5 and 4 like bands on the top and bottom for the cell thing. That's kind of fun.
Which, by the way, original
Yeah,
SE in my
yeah.
head.
Hell yeah. I need to set this up again so when I write my like article about why small phones can't exist anymore, I can take screenshots of websites on this. Um,
Okay, so now I again, as I was saying, I don't particularly care for in-display fingerprint necessarily. I'm I don't like it as much as rear fingerprint readers, because for the exactly the reason you said, and I've been a big proponent of the idea that I when I pull the phone out of my pocket, I really want specifically my middle finger could land perfectly on that spot. I could have it unlocked as my phone was coming out of my pocket. It was fully unlocked before it was even out of my pocket. And that was great. I liked that. It was reliable, it was consistent, it was fast, it was effective. And so yeah, I think that was the best unlocking experience. With in display, I think there are good and bad sides to it. The bad side, of course, being you either have to have very good muscle memory for landing your finger exactly where the fingerprint reader is, and yes, the size of the reader can help with this scenario, but for the most part, you have to be very precise and just know. Like, you have to really practice getting that touch point. Or and notably, some phones also don't wake up to just putting your finger there, which I've noticed that's not necessarily ideal either. Sometimes the screen has to wake before it'll do that. But the just in general, I feel like the rear fingerprint reader, since you could have a case that would also kind of guide your finger in, just made that experience so much easier. And so I did like that. The one counter I will give with in-display fingerprint readers, which I think made them really good, and I've made this argument for years. When people see, when people who aren't super tech literate, or more specifically, they're not very smartphone literate, when they see an interface pop up with a fingerprint on it, basically saying use the fingerprint reader on your phone to unlock this or to activate that, I think they want to put their finger on the fingerprint icon to unlock their phone. And so having a rear fingerprint reader, I think genuinely did confuse some people. And for that reason, I think it is good actually having in-display fingerprint readers. And sometimes having a more informative UI that goes along with this could also make some sense. So I don't think it's without value. And I think for some people who also don't like a case with a hole in the back of it, that's also another reason why you might totally want an in-display fingerprint reader. These are all perfectly good reasons why you could want an in-display fingerprint reader. For me personally, rear fingerprint reader was peak. It was the best experience of all of them. I've tried everything at some point or another, and that's still the one that for me was the best experience. And I think for most people, I could be wrong, but I think most people probably would also be the happiest with that version. By the way, I will just quickly acknowledge, yes, I know, if you live in super cold environments, Face ID suddenly is a hell of a lot better than fingerprint. Because yes, pulling your hand out of a glove or using one of those specialty gloves with a removable fingertip or something, whatever, yeah, that sucks. So fine, I get that, but otherwise, give me a rear fingerprint reader any day. Give me a rear fingerprint reader any day. I still think that was the best.
Yeah, I mean, anything's better than Touch ID, especially because, like, I know I'm increasingly alone in doing this, but I still wear masks sometimes in public, and doesn't that shit doesn't work. I know Apple like really tried to make it work, where it's like, it basically just ends up taking longer because instead of the data of your whole face, it has to try to guess like your eyes and like your part of your nose
Honestly,
is you.
I think they stopped trying to make it work around 2022.
Yeah, it doesn't work well. Like almost every time I have to do the key combination on my phone.
Carson, yes.
So like
all three in
yeah,
the phone. That's the correct answer.
and you have to do all of them at the same time, like it's like a nuclear, like
The ultimate unlock.
silo. Yeah, it's like
launching nuclear codes or something.
Yeah, you also have to pee on it for DNA analysis.
Really,
that's why it's IP68 resistant.
Okay. See, I would have gone with blood sample.
Yeah, I mean, either of those, they could also, it could be multi-purpose. It also, checks your sample in Apple Health for a multitude of health conditions. Yeah, so I don't like Face ID. I really wish, we kind of kept with fingerprint sensor. I know if I had an Android phone, this would be less of an issue, but yeah. Give me LG with the voice unlock. Oh, jeez.
I honestly don't remember that. Which, to be fair, LG, so it's easy to... It honestly, anything about LG that wasn't LG Friends, which we... Or wait, was that Moto Friends? Thought it was LG, but whatever. No, it was Moto Mods and LG Friends.
Yeah, okay. LG...
Aside from LG Friends, honestly, almost everything about LG was really forgettable. That and the time that they put the reverse notch in a phone, which was kind of neat, but... Yeah, pretty much everything else about LG was forgotten. So
I mostly remember on like a lot of LG budget phones, and almost everyone did this on budget phones, where there was like, I mean, this probably still exists also, but like there was face unlock. That was like if you held up a picture of the person, it would unlock. Like it's just like we really innovated in the like how to make a phone as easy to break into as possible category for a while.
Oh boy, did we.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's the iPhone. Don't buy it because we still don't know that Moto might be garbage. And even if it's not, like I think for most people, getting an old flagship is still better. But yeah, so that will be available February. When is it? Apple's press release hid this somewhere. Where is it? Where's the date? Apple. Okay, I don't know. Sometime this month you'll be able to buy one, but don't.
Carson, I'm trying to remember the name of the phone, so I'm looking for it right now. But while I was looking, I did also see an image of something else that was another hilarious LG-ism, the LG Wing, which was, oh my god, levels of crazy.
Was the reverse notch thing one of the LG V phones?
That might be it.
Because the V phones were the ones that had like the extra screen,
yeah,
and then
that
it, like,
tiny
morphed.
little extra display at the top, and so yeah,
which Samsung also like kind of did with the Edge phones, but that was still part of the main panel, and LG eventually did that too, but yeah, some of those phones were weird. And also LG sucked at updates.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember updating that posted Android police that died after I left of keeping track of security updates on Android phones, and LG was always near the bottom.
Yeah, the wing was ridiculous that Carson just linked to. Okay, it wasn't the V60 ThinQ 5G. And yes, I know it's supposed to be pronounced think, but no, it's the ThinQ. Screw LG for trying to get away with think. Was it maybe the V50? I know there was definitely a phone that did this, and I just can't remember. Nope, that one has a notch too. I know it's weird to call it a reverse notch, but that's kind of how I think of it, just because it was more like somebody cut into the bezel rather than having something cut out of the screen. Maybe the G8? Yeah, I'm not finding it, but they definitely did this. It was a thing where in the upper right corner of the phone, instead of they just had a piece that was cut out of the bezel where the screen just went a little further up, and that was their way of like adding a little bit of screen space. And I don't think that the OS even filled that space at all. I think they had a separate piece of software running that put its own custom thing into that display. LG V20? It's far enough back in the numbers that would make some sense. I don't think this is it either, is it? Maybe it is. Yeah, this must be it. Because, it's larger than I remembered it being, but yeah, it has.
That's what they said.
Really, you're gonna go with it? That's what they said on that.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, it had the camera stuff
page.
all pushed to the left side, and then this extra bit that was like an app selector kind of thing on like 2/3 of the width of the screen that was just up there at the top. And yeah, it was such a weird choice. Like, it honestly, I think it was a smarter approach than the notch itself, but it was also kind of just weird and dumb. To this day, I stand behind the idea that the punch hole design and the notch were both just bad choices.
Sorry, I was trying to find a lightning cable so I can turn this iPhone back on.
Oh, Corbin,
I have
knowing you
two...
and how much you like to fiddle with old stuff, what's going to suck is in several years you're going to again be saying the words, "I'm trying to find a lightning cable," but it's going to be followed by, "Does anyone have one lying around that you can ship to me?"
It's for content. Yeah. Yeah. No, I did. I did get a for content. I did plug in my old iPod again, which needed not the first gen iPod, which needed the stupid FireWire cable that I had to order online because I don't have any of those, but the other one that had the 30-pin dock connector, which actually I went to my thrift store and they had one of those cables, so that was nice.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There was a lot of 30-pin cables out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they also have a pile of lightning cables, but I still have one. Yeah, so that's the iPhone.
Yeah. And I stand by my theory. I think it's going to sell really well. Not crazy well, but I think it's going to be a pretty big seller still. and uh, and I think a lot of people will end up at least soft regret about it, if not like totally regretting it, the way most SE buyers ended up really regretting that phone.
Yeah, and because it has a number associated with the main iPhones now, which we haven't had for years since I think like the iPhone 5C. I do wonder if this will be updated yearly now. Um,
That's a good
I don't.
question. I,
Maybe they'll do it yearly, but it'll be in this like half iPhone cycle, um, like they're doing this time and what Google does. You know, they update the A phones before or after the that year's mainline Pixel. So, uh, um,
Carson.
maybe next year it'll be more compelling or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that would be good. And hey, I'm fully on board with the idea that they can and probably should update them. If they're doing what I predicted with the binning process, then I think it's actually pretty likely they would keep updating this yearly, because every year they're going to have a decent stockpile of chips that just they're
Right.
they were rejects, but they're still good enough to put into phones. So I would be shocked if they don't keep doing this, unless, with a big massive exception being, if they launch any other products that they can use iPhone chips in. If they launch anything else and are like, oh, you know what, hey, we've got a new set of speakers that could really benefit from having an iPhone chip, or we're gonna launch like, see, I want to say like a new ultra cheap iPad, but I I think they're gonna stick with the strategy they have already on the iPads. Um, which, speaking of, new iPads are supposed to be announced next month, I think. So that's coming up. But yeah, unless they find some other use for those lower bin chips, then it just makes sense to shuffle them out in the form of new phones. And otherwise, they're just throwing those chips out, and we know Apple does not like the idea of waste when it costs them money. I can't wait for them to actually talk about, we found new and innovative ways to use all of our produced materials, no matter what. And low key, they're basically just saying, yeah, we shoved them all into phones and sold them to you for way higher than you probably should have paid.
Yeah. Disappointing. That's all I have to say.
That it is. But I can tell from the tone of your voice and from the tone of mine, I think we're probably talking this to death. So shall we end it?
Yep.
All right. Well, Corbin, thanks for coming on. Is there anything you would like to pitch, plug, push, or name check?
No, just go to spacebar.news and put your email address in and tell your friends. Send your friends a cool article on there. Go pick one you think is cool.
Just one. No more.
Yeah.
Do not overload them. That can be a problem. But
my poor web server, please don't.
I mean that could overload the people, but yeah.
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 It's running on one of the old phones and
all right. And as for me, I will be back this weekend with some game streams, playing probably a boatload of Overwatch, but definitely still some Rivals is going to slip in there too for sure, because I need to get caught up on that. And we will be back next week with another RambleCast. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. Of course, huge thanks to Austin, Carson, David, Diablo, and Curvy Mermaid for being supporters of the channel. And yeah, with that, I think I've said all of my stuff. So, thank you all for coming by, hanging out, being in the chat room, and we'll catch you next time. Good night, everybody.
Bye.